Almost anyone who has watched Sam Howell will tell you he's a terrible quarterback.
Wobbly pass is picked off.
He takes too many sacks, he throws more interceptions than touchdowns, and in fact, if you watch his most recent game against the Packers, he was entirely useless. On 18 dropbacks, he threw for 24 yards, lost 21 yards on sacks, and threw a pick. That's 0.17 net yards per attempt. So bad that the Seahawks would have literally been better off running the wildcat. But despite what people will have you think, he wasn't always seen this way.
Catch made. It's a Washington touchdown.
1 year ago, on the same field he just embarrassed himself on national television, it's 3rd and 10. 1 minute, 2 seconds on the clock. The Commanders are down a touchdown. It's been a hard-fought game, partially due to the Commanders' inability, or rather, refusal to run the ball. Brian Robinson Jr. has 38 yards on only 8 carries. Howell, for his part, has just short of 300 yards passing with 2 touchdowns. Jackass announcer Mark Sanchez is talking about finding a short completion to make it 4th and manageable, when just like his chest, Howell finds a hole in the defense.
Over the middle, it's caught at the 5th hole. De'Ami Brown, he'll take it to the house for the touchdown.
This is the peak of Sam Howell's career. It's also the end of Sam Howell's career. At this point in the season, Howell has 17 touchdowns to 9 picks, leads the league with 2,783 yards, and has a passer rating of 91.5. Despite playing with one of the worst defenses in NFL history, Howell has the Commanders at 4-5, and right now he's looking to make them 5-5. From this point on, Sam Howell has never won a football game again. The Seahawks drive on washed football terrorist Jack Del Rio's 32nd ranked defense with ease, targeting inept cornerback 2 Benjamin St-Juste, who's only on the team because they can save cap space by paying him Canadian Monopoly dollars. Jason Myers kicks the game winner as time expires.
Good hole. Good kick. Seattle wins it. 29-26.
For the rest of the season, Howell throws just 4 touchdowns to 12 interceptions in 7 games, averaging a miserable 5.4 yards per attempt, 166 passing yards per game, and a passer rating of 55.6. The Commanders go from averaging 21.7 points per game, good for 16th in the league, to just 16 points per game, good for 29th. The question now becomes, how does a 23-year-old quarterback with limitless arm talent go from putting up top 10 numbers to being the worst quarterback in the NFL in just a matter of weeks? It might be those very top 10 numbers that are to blame. First, let's get some background on the Washington Commanders.
We can be eliminated.
Yeah. In 2022, Washington is a defensive team. Under offensive coordinator Scott Turner, the offense is only 24th in the league with 18.9 points per game. But the 7th-ranked defense has them strongly in wildcard contention at 7-5. This is a defense that just gets you off the field, despite an absolutely horrible turnover rate of only 7.6%. They lead the league in opponent time per drive at 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Combine this with an offense that is 10th in the league with 2 minutes and 53 seconds per drive, and you get a team that dominates time of possession and wins and losses, including a game against the then undefeated Eagles on Monday Night Football, where the 10.5-point underdog Commanders dominate with a 40-minute time of possession, being the only team to beat Jalen Hurts that entire regular season. This is not just a wildcard team. This is a dangerous wildcard team. They have proven that on any given Sunday they can show up and beat anybody, and they are possibly even better than their record suggests, as now backup Carson Wentz had them at only 2-4 through 6 weeks with horrid QB play before getting injured and replaced by fan favorite Taylor Heineke. Just because you can win on any given Sunday though, does not mean you will. After tying the Giants, losing to the Giants, and being dominated by the 49ers, coach Ron Rivera suddenly gets cold feet. Maybe it is time to put Carson Wentz back as the starter. After all, Heineke at best is a very mediocre quarterback, and Wentz has the upside to go for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on any day.
That's the direction that Wentz is looking, and there's Denzel Ward looking for the pick. He's got it.
Not only does Wentz throw the Commanders' playoff chances in the garbage, but the supposedly elite Commanders defense completely falls apart, giving Deshaun Watson 3 touchdowns to 0 picks, and essentially tricking the Browns into thinking he's still their QB of the future. The Commanders are not only eliminated from the playoffs, but they have lost every shred of respect they had in Week 12. All they needed to do was win 2 of their last 5 games to make the playoffs. They haven't won 1. Ron Rivera cowardly decides Taylor Heineke should be reinstated as the starter for the final game. Heineke, the only adult in the room, reminds Rivera that in this meaningless Week 18 game, he should probably see what he has in his rookie QB. Sam Howell will be starting Week 18 against the Dallas Cowboys. 7-point underdogs, 12-4 Cowboys, 5th round rookie QB, haven't won a game since November. First pass of the game.
Back to throw it for the first time. Going over the middle has McLaurin racing in for the end zone and a score.
Welcome to the NFL, Sam Howell. Commanders absolutely dominate the Cowboys, and while his numbers don't jump off the screen, Howell plays very well, even showing elite rushing vision for a quarterback on his third quarter rushing touchdown. It's important to note that while this game is meaningless for the Commanders, it's not meaningless for the Cowboys. If the Cowboys win and the Eagles lose to the Giants, the Cowboys win the NFC East, becoming the first back-to-back champs of the division since 2004. The NFL has scheduled both of these games at the same time to make sure they were not meaningless, and the Cowboys would play their starters until almost the end of the fourth quarter, when it became obvious the Eagles would win. We are so back. Alright, maybe we collapsed and missed the playoffs, but this team was a QB away all year, and now we have our QB of the future. That was the 5th ranked scoring defense in the NFL, and he just averaged 9 yards per attempt against them. In the offseason, it gets even better. The Commanders hit the jackpot, replacing their pedestrian offensive coordinator Scott Turner with the man in charge of the Kansas City Chiefs offense, Eric Bieniemy. The Commanders' defense was 7th in the league despite a pathetic turnover ratio. Imagine how elite they'll be with ball hawk Emmanuel Forbes.
Going end zone, Wentz Brown, it's there! Touchdown, Philadelphia!
Okay, never mind. In the first half of the season, it was clear Washington would not get anywhere due to their suddenly horrible defense. But Sam Howell was the bright spot, progressing through his reads like a vet, seemingly being able to make any throw on the field. He does have 2 disaster games in this stretch, but they were far outnumbered by offensive explosions. Howell was 1 yard away from having 6 300-yard games. In weeks 11 and 12, however, the cracks start to show in what has been a very unsustainable offense. Despite these offensive explosions, Howell is on track to smash the record for sacks taken by a QB. And it's not exactly easy to win games when you're taking 5 sacks every single game. The Giants had already held Howell and the Commanders to their 2nd worst offensive performance all year due to defensive coordinator Wink Martindale's strategy of blitzing on every play like a little cousin on Madden. This should not have worked, but Howell was so bad under pressure that the Giants' 26th ranked defense picked off Howell 2 times. Despite all of this, the Commanders still have the ball and a chance to win. On the Giants' 48 with just under 30 seconds left, Howell has a chance to put a bad game behind him and keep the Commanders in the wildcard race.
From the Giants' 48, Howell under pressure, and then he will throw. Picked off. Isaiah Simmons with the interception down the sideline. Simmons.
Honestly, this team wasn't even built to win anyways. Besides interior D-line, they don't have a single position group that's above average. At least Howell's better than Jordan Love. At this point, we may as well just see what we have in Howell and build around him. I mean, at 4 and 7, we're not going to be drafting high enough to pick like Drake May or Caleb Williams. Also, what better stage for Howell to show the world what he can do than Thanksgiving? It's time for all the drunk uncles to see what our boy is really capable of. The Commanders start out moving the ball, but both of their first 2 drives stall at midfield, and they are forced to punt. Meanwhile, the Cowboys dominate the Commanders' defense, scoring on 90 and 75-yard drives back-to-back to take a 14-3 lead. Howell responds with a 13-play 75-yard touchdown drive, where he takes it in himself. 14-10. Unfortunately, the Commanders' defense can't stop a cold, and with just 2 minutes left on the clock, the Cowboys score with ease, going into halftime up 20-10. Howell doesn't play bad per se, but I think the sequence is a great microcosm of the game. On 3rd and 17, Howell makes a pass to Byron Pringle for a 16-yard gain. On 4th and 1, he takes a 10-yard sack. So close to success before being brought back to reality. The Commanders end 2 long, promising drives with turnover on downs, and just can't keep up with the Cowboys, who run up the score in the 4th quarter after a brutal pick 6. Final score, 45-10. Alright, this Commanders team stinks. 2-0 was a mirage, even 4-5 was a mirage. Still though, Howell showed signs of life against a strong Cowboys defense, and at 4-8, we're not even picking high enough to draft McCarthy or Daniels, let alone May or Williams. The Howell doubters are starting to get a little loud, sure, but this team is terrible, like what do you want him to do? He still threw for 300 yards. I think if Miami underrates him, they might have a nice little surprise coming their way. The first quarter has been a disaster. We've punted 3 times, and our defense looks horrible. Still, we're only down 10, we just forced our first punt of the game, and we have great starting field position. If we can score here, we can put all of this behind us. Let's get Sam going with an easy completion to build his confidence back, like a screen or something. Oh. Their offense was eventually able to string together 2 nice drives ending in Howell rushing touchdowns, but one of those was in mega garbage time. The defense was horrible as always, but the offense's shortcomings were getting really hard to ignore. They punted 5 times. Alright, this was a tough one, but remember boys, eyes on the prize. If we keep losing, we can pair up Marvin Harrison with Terry McLaurin. Can you imagine Howell throwing to the 2 of them? It's gonna be electric. Okay fine, he did look pretty bad, but he still had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had more touchdowns than interceptions. We've got a bye week to get right, and then we play the 6-6 Rams and the 4-8 Jets. Howell's gonna destroy them and get right back on track.
2 receivers at the top, 2 stacked at the bottom. Howell's in trouble. rolls the pocket, directing traffic, throws on the run, and a one-handed grab, and an interception!
In the final stretch of the season, Howell looks so shell-shocked, so afraid of taking more sacks, that he just turns over the ball instead. A level of horrible, so inexplicable, that I felt like I was in an asylum reading social media takes from fans who seemed to just believe he had always been this bad. He was completely useless. The ball literally never got moved. Every time they benched him for Jacoby Brissett, they immediately started scoring touchdowns. In fact, Brissett did so good, he almost screwed them out of the second pick in the draft. The Commanders lose out, and thanks to tiebreakers, they get the second overall pick, despite literally beating the other two 4-win teams, the Patriots and Cardinals. The decision on what to do with Sam Howell goes from difficult to incredibly easy. Washington takes Jaden Daniels second overall and trades Howell away. Daniels' rookie season exceeds even the most ridiculous of expectations, and even Howell's biggest supporters just forget he even existed. So what the hell happened? I suspect that the murder of Sam Howell was not just an inside job, but it was a collaborative effort. It takes more than one person to kill a young QB's career that quickly. So let's take a look at the suspects. First, his offensive line. When a QB takes 65 sacks in the season, that's gotta be the first thing you look at. Right tackle Andrew Wiley and left tackle Charles Leno both get a ton of hate from the fan base. But if you look up the pressure numbers, Wiley was just a little bit below average, giving up pressure 6% of the time. The average is 5.6%. Charles Leno, who I saw Commanders fans on social media say some very rude things about, was actually slightly above average, just like he's been every single year for Washington, allowing a pressure rate of 5.4%. In totality, it's not perfect tackle play by any means, but it's not far below average, and certainly not enough to explain the murder of Sam Howell. The guards are where the cracks start to show. Right guard Sam Cosmi was one of the best in the entire NFL, and the best player on the entire Commanders roster, but left guard was a mix of Chris Paul and Sadiq Charles. Both of them gave up pressure rates of over 8%, massively over the average for guards at 4.8%. Chris Paul in 2023 was one of the worst offensive linemen I have ever watched. Although, this year he's actually revived his career, and it's been pretty amazing to watch his improvement, so shout out to Chris Paul. Still, that's one bad spot on the entire line so far. That's not enough to kill a QB. Finally, we get to the centers. Ever since the elite Chase Roulier suffered a career-ending injury in 2022, the Commanders had awful center play. Centers do not allow much pressures usually, with an average pressure rate of just 3.9%. Nick Gates, who played about half the season, allowed a high rate of 4.8%, but Tyler Larson allowed a much more ridiculous rate, 7.4%. Worse than both of his tackles, who were getting a lot more hate. Larson was the starter in weeks 11 to 14, which makes him an easy target to pin Sam's downfall on. Except he also started in weeks 8, 9, and 10, which was Sam's best stretch of the season. Definitely not helping, but he can't be the sole culprit. In totality, the Commanders were a below-average line with massive weaknesses at left guard and center. But even then, there were 12 lines that gave up pressure at a higher rate. This was clearly a contributing factor, but if this was all it took to kill a QB, you'd see a lot more QB's careers falling apart every season. Could Sam Howell have done it himself? Howell was never good at avoiding pressure. It was his biggest glaring weakness in college, as pressure to sack rate was over 30%, and the primary reason a guy with his arm talent was available in the 5th round to begin with. This was not a field vision problem like with Justin Fields. Sam Howell was very capable of progressing through his reads and accurately hitting the open man. The problem is that when the play didn't unfold as planned, Howell froze. When most QBs would scramble, improvise, or throw it away, Howell would take the sack. When pressure broke through, Howell took the sack. When the defense blitzed, Howell took the sack. And this is all despite his rushing capabilities. He has shown he has the vision to find the running lane, he has shown he can make guys miss, but he never went out and did it, which is why he had relatively pedestrian rushing stats for a guy of pretty good running capabilities. His pressure to sack rate was in the 30s in the middle of the season, a completely unacceptable number. Even Caleb Williams was only 28% in his rookie year.
Editor's note, just because I think in my script I really didn't emphasize this enough, but Howell really struggled with hesitation. So I obviously talk about him freezing up when the play breaks down or when they blitz, but a lot of times he would make a read and he would either hesitate too long and not be able to throw it. A lot of times that would lead to a sack, or he would make a read and hesitate and then throw it late and then get picked off. I think that I need to emphasize this because this was a massive weakness in his game and I did not cover it enough. Also, I have a better audio recording setup that I just didn't use for this video because I was being lazy when I recorded it. I'm going to use it next time because editing through all of this, the audio is pissing me off.
Despite all of this, however, I do not think Sam Howell was the #1 culprit. While it is true that most players don't improve greatly on their pressure to sack ratio, Jaden Daniels literally did this the following year, turning a horrible pressure to sack ratio in college to just a below average one. With support from coaches, support from the run game, and better play calling, this weakness could have been mitigated from overbearingly bad to a weakness we could at least try and live with. Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, and Aaron Rodgers have all been successful with high pressure to sack numbers. This leads me to who I think the primary culprit of this murder was. Eric Bieniemy in Washington was the worst offensive coordinator I've ever had the displeasure of watching. The 2022 Commanders offense was not good. The reason the Commanders have been able to win games with it despite all of that was because they would stick to the run, finishing 4th in attempts and 12th in yards, despite their awful 4 yards per rushing attempt. They controlled the clock, which allowed their defense to play as an elite unit, and took the pressure off of their pretty bad quarterbacks. Eric Bieniemy turned this on his head, and ran one of the most baffling offenses in NFL history. The Commanders threw the ball 66% of the time in 2023, with Howell leading the entire NFL in passing attempts. Eric would abandon the run at the first sign of adversity, including baffling games such as Week 3 against the Bills, where the Commanders had 105 yards on only 13 rushes. The team scored 3 points in this game. Howell threw 4 interceptions and took 9 sacks. Maybe a little more involvement from the rushing game would have been nice, Eric. Even after getting benched multiple times, Howell still led the NFL in pass attempts with 612. And for most of the season, he was somehow managing to keep up with his high volume, having 7 yards per attempt through Week 10. Eric thought that just because the Chiefs could throw the ball with Mahomes 650 times in 2022, a middling Commanders offense could somehow also succeed in this fashion. This is a second-year quarterback with a very mediocre receiving group, a below-average offensive line, the 32nd ranked defense, and no help from the run game. And he's throwing 70% of the time. He played on a 9-game stretch where he only had under 40 pass attempts 1 time, and this was one of the only 2 wins in that stretch. The fact that Howell looked good at all is a testament to both his raw talent and how garbage the Eagles' defense was in 2023. In 2022, the offense, with arguably a worse group of players, was 10th in the NFL in time per drive. Scott Turner refused to abandon the run and controlled time of possession. This number fell all the way to 26th in the NFL in 2023, largely because Eric was terrified of running the ball. The Commanders went from elite at time of possession to absolutely horrible at it, which just forced Howell to have to throw even more to stay in games. With an untalented offense, a terrible play caller, a first-year quarterback who is talented but incredibly flawed, it's a miracle that the offense even maintained 16th in the NFL for 10 weeks, even if they were feeding off a pretty weak schedule. All of that being said, the killer of Sam Howell was never any coach or player. Finishing 4-13 in 2023, with the worst defense in the NFL and perhaps the least talented roster in the entire league, Washington needed a complete change. Ron Rivera was gone, football terrorist Jack Del Rio was gone, Eric Bieniemy was definitely gone. Why keep the quarterback that those guys chose? Yes, Howell's shown some potential, but at the 2nd overall pick, Jaden Daniels and Drake May have both shown more potential, and they're younger, and you have more years on their rookie contract. It's a no-brainer. New Commanders GM Adam Peters trades Howell a 4th and a 6th to the Seahawks in return for a 3rd and a 5th, which is really good value considering what Howell is at this point. Seahawks general manager John Schneider was convinced to trade for him due to his performance against them in Week 10.
Sam's a football player.
Sam Howell sucking for the Seahawks was incredibly predictable. Not only was their pass blocking worse than Washington's, but when Howell came against the Packers, they were in desperation mode, throwing on nearly every play and completely abandoning the run. The same thing we had literally just watched destroy Howell's career. I was laughing my ass off watching the Seahawks game because it was clear they had no idea who they had traded for. As to where he stands today, the question becomes if Howell can ever reach that potential he flashed again. I think it's unlikely, and he's not some first-round picks that teams are going to pay much mind to. He's in his 4th year, he's pretty small for a quarterback, and he's fallen all the way down to 3rd stringer after being traded 3 times. The only way Howell ever becomes any level of NFL starter at this point is if he goes to the perfect situation and gets lucky. Howell's currently the 3rd string quarterback for the Eagles, and the Eagles are actually a great place for Howell to be. Over the last 2 seasons, Jalen Hurts has taken sacks on 9.5% of his dropbacks, one of the highest in the NFL, and the clear highest of any quarterback who's been considered even decent. This is an offense that has both an elite line and a high tolerance for quarterback sack rate due to their low pass attempts and rushing-centric offense. While he's no Hurts, Howell can clearly run, and the Eagles would definitely take better advantage of that than the Commanders did.
However, it's unlikely Howell will ever play for the Eagles.
Backup Tanner McKee has looked quite good in his limited playtime. Hurts has no history of serious injuries, and he's nowhere close to being benched. The Vikings are another good situation, as they've generally maximized their quarterback talent, and Kevin O'Connell is a good offensive offensive coach. The Vikings already had Howell on their roster and traded him away, but maybe O'Connell sees enough in Howell to bring him back if he gets released. The 49ers have already helped multiple struggling quarterbacks survive their career, helping Sam Darnold back on his feet, and now Mac Jones. Shanahan's system above all else requires execution from the QB, and I think one of Howell's strengths is progressing through his reads. Since all their backups look too good and end up somewhere else, the Niners will probably need a new backup QB in 2026, and Howell could be the perfect candidate. The reason I care so much about this failed 5th round pick is that Sam Howell is the final tragic story of a horrible Dan Snyder regime. Drafted by a middling team with no idea or plans on how to compete, coached by lame ducks waiting to be fired, thrown into a situation where he was doomed from the start, and rightfully replaced by a new regime that had nothing to do with his acquisition. Of all the terrible QBs I've watched go in and out of Washington, Howell was different. I still hold out some hope that Howell can find the right situation and become the QB he was always meant to be. A discount Baker Mayfield.
3rd down and goal. It's Howell. Stepping up. It's Howell on the move. Tie game. Touchdown. Howell, one last chance. End zone. Touchdown. On their last breath.